Hey, it's Soul, bringing you the World of Warcraft. Today I'm going to show you guys how I tank Spellblade Aluriel, the kind of fourth boss in the Nighthold raid. I only call it the fourth because there was a recent change that allows you to skip this boss and move on to almost any of the other bosses in the raid. And in a nutshell, while the tanking perspective isn't as difficult as some of the other roles in this fight, it still gets pretty hectic and there's a lot that tanks do to help participate and give a hand to their team. For this fight I went with Blessed Hammer, First Avenger, although I could have went for Bastion of Light too, Blinding Light as usual, Blessing of Spell Warding and Hand of the Protector because there isn't a whole lot of movement involved, Judgment of Light, and this time Righteous Protector, especially if you happen to not be as geared as you think you should. There are 3 phases to this fight, and for the entire raid there's quite a bit going on. For tanks though, the one ability that you've gotta keep an eye out for and handle is Annihilate, which in hindsight, by the way, I got that wrong with Trilliax's ability, you know, that laser spinny thing majigger. Yeah, that's Annihilation, this is Annihilate, and I think it's at this point where Blizzard has probably gotta think a little bit harder about renaming skills or, you know, making the names of skills sound unique. Anyway, Annihilate works similarly to Trilliax's Arcane Slash. It hits up to 2 targets, which are going to be your tanks. Both targets are going to take a lot of physical damage over several seconds. The tank holding on to the boss at the time is going to get a stacking debuff that will make them take 75% additional physical damage from the boss. This lasts for a minute and a half, which will basically mean that once again, each tank is going to hold on to 2 stacks before they switch. Unlike Trilliax's Arcane Slash though, Annihilate, it will annihilate you if you're not prepared for it. The tanks and healers need to definitely be aware that once Annihilate start going out, both tanks are going to be taking loads and loads of damage. When either tank is not tanking Aluriel, they're going to get hit with this what's basically an empowered Annihilate twice before taking the boss back. The rule of thumb here is to make sure your active mitigation is always active every time Annihilate goes off. If you're debuffed, also make sure you have your Light of the Protector handy or maybe pop a personal cooldown. Thankfully, between your Eye of Tyr, Avenging Wrath, and your Ardent Defender, you should be able to pop one of these cooldowns every time one of the bigger Annihilates start going out. You can also use your Guardian of the Ancient Kings, but personally I hold on to it and I'll tell you why later. So now that we have that Annihilate business out of the way, let's get to the fight. As you see, we hold on to Spellblade at the bottom of these stairs. Make sure that no one's on top of the stairs to avoid line of sight issues. There are 3 phases to this fight, a Frost, Fire, and Arcane phase. The start of the Frost phase shouldn't be that bad. For the most part, your ranged and healers will be handling Mark of Frost. This is a debuff that for the most part you should not get, at least not until this whole Frost phase is almost over. You're going to see ice patches on the ground and adds will spawn. Do your best to pick them up, otherwise the raid may just collapse on you. The adds will need to be cleared, but more importantly you need to make sure that you don't get pushed out of this ice dome thing. If you do, you'll get stunned and you'll need to Divine Shield your way out of that. Preferably though, just try not to get pushed out. You can go as far as using your Divine Steed to stay inside, but Annihilate is certain to go off during this mini phase, so you want to try your best to aim it correctly. I didn't say this before, but as a risky option, instead of having the debuff tank take an Annihilate, you can possibly have a plate DPS pop a defensive cooldown and take an Annihilate for them. So keep that in mind if you or your other tank are getting blasted, or otherwise the healers can't keep up with the damage. Anyway, just as those adds are dying, the boss goes into the fire phase. Ranged and healers are once again going to scatter and make sure that they spread their whole fire debuff circle thing correctly. Once you see pools of fire, feel free to move the boss over so you can try to help out with bringing those adds down because they don't move on heroic. On normal they do though. On heroic, these adds cast Pyroblast and it hurts like hell. You can interrupt them though, so as a paladin, do your job. Use Rebuke, your Avenger Shield, your Arcane Torrent if you have it, anything you've got to prevent those casts from going off. Shortly after those fire adds die, the bosses are going to go into the Arcane phase. At the start of this phase, you basically just avoid stuff. What you want to prepare for is when the boss detonates these Arcane Orbs. There are 2 ways to go about this, and it'll depend on who's tanking the boss at the time. One is to have the entire raid stack. When Detonate Arcane Orb occurs, the whole raid would need to move together to avoid the Arcane Orbs that start crashing onto the ground. You also need to make sure that these orbs kind of drop close together. This is because the impact point will leave a fog, and from this fog will come adds and we need to kill the adds. The risk here is that Annihilate will go off during this mini phase. On top of all the damage that's going to hit the raid, it's going to be hard to tell if Annihilate's going to hit the tanks or if it's going to hit someone else haphazardly. The other option is what I do, which is to solo the boss as the raid does their dance and soak and Annihilate by myself. and there are several different ways to handle this. One is to use a little trick where you pop Divine Shield and taunt the boss at the same time Annihilate goes off, and that way that you don't really take much damage at all. Just keep in mind though that your taunt will wear off before Annihilate does. Right click or macro that off so you can get the boss back on you. You could also call for externals and blow most of your cooldowns to soak that Annihilate. Just keep in mind though that for an average team you're probably not going to kill the boss at this point, so try not to expend all the raid's cooldowns for this one Annihilate. Keep something handy so that way you can recover and get back into the groove of things. Anyway, once that fog is laid down, ads are going to appear from them. They cast Armageddon, and if they happen to get that cast off, pretty much everyone's going to die. This is usually the part where you pop Bloodlust and try to get them all down. By the way, if you want to eke a little bit more DPS out, you don't necessarily have to kill all of them. You can leave 2, maybe 3 of them up, and then just use healer or otherwise defensive cooldowns to keep the raid alive. If you do go for that option, also keep in mind that the boss is going to go back into the frost phase before that cast goes off. So be careful, and make sure that the healers take care of their initial mark of frost targets. Other than that, nothing changes. If Aluriel is able to get through the frost, the fire, and the arcane phases again, you're going to hit Enrage right after. So don't do that. So that's the fight, and I hope this guide helps you out. As always, if you enjoyed this guide, like and share, and sub if you want to see more content. You guys have a good one, and I'll see you at the next boss. I'm Soul. Stay breezy, guys.